So, yeah, welcome to another How to Draw a Cat. All right, so I wanted to just do the profile, the side view of a kitten. References I'll throw up on the overlay like I did last time, if you saw that one. If not, go check it out, because you know what? Drawing is fun. You don't necessarily need to know every muscle that there is in the animal that you're drawing, or the person or whatever. But if those muscles are going to be, if they're standing in a certain way or whatever, you need to know how they should move and fold and how they interact with the skin. But it doesn't mean you have to be like an anatomical expert. I studied anatomy and I still suck at it. Anyway, a couple times actually. I'm terrible with remembering names for factoids and stuff. So yeah, bye med school. So one of the cool things that he had suggested was, start with a circle. One of the things that Aaron Blaze had suggested, which I thought was really cool, is the forehead of a cat slopes much more dramatically than, say, like a dog's. So if you come, say, like this front four here, and then right around this kind of flattens out right here between the eyes where the bridge of the nose is, and then there's sort of their snout, it kind of just comes down about that far. But what's interesting is that these two lines here are almost parallel. They're not exactly parallel, but they're pretty close. So if you were doing it from memory, making these two lines parallel, and it'll look like your brain will make sense of it. But like, yeah, that looks like a cat to me. All right, so you start to a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it so you have something to give yourself some balance, some space in. His nose comes off more or less the front there, and then that slope of his head is here in the middle. Go ahead and start his ear over here. It's sort of like a triangle, obviously. You pull back. See, that circle gives you a guide to draw on. And then coming from the front of his forehead, he's got this little slope, and then he's got his other ear that comes up and over. It's a little closer to the camera, so it's maybe more pronounced. And then back of his head is here. And this is just to cut in the idea of how big his face should be based on where his features are. And then that's his nose coming down. That's his mouth. Bottom of his chin comes up a little bit, and then his chin comes in. Then you got fur all over the place down here. And then for his eye, following that slope kind of goes down into here. His eye is almost straight up and down there because of the angle. And again, this is like an almond-shaped teardrop almost looking thing. His eye's pretty big compared to the rest of his face. I think our kitten wants to come in. So just readjust for the bridge of his nose there. And then his nose, his nostril is basically in there. And then his little eye. And then he's got a reflection on his eye. And then I'm going to go back in here, and they have a hard shape around their eye. Where their sclera would be, the white part of their eye. It's actually kind of like a lighter gray usually in pictures, and you don't see it very much. And then of course this is pretty dark in here. I had mentioned this before, I think they have it because it helps with their sight. I think it helps with their sight. I don't quote me on that. And there's the basic idea of his eye. And as I mentioned, they usually have this little line that comes back and it breaks down into their rest of their fur line. Even if they're, in this case, this cat's gray, you can still see a hint of that here. And rounding off his eye a little more, getting into that darkness a little bit. See, that little stuff like that helps to make it seem a little more on par what you're seeing. And his nose this ever so slightly behind, like that. And then with the fur on the ears, they usually have a lot of fur, so you can usually get away with, you know, something to this effect when you're doing the inside of their ear. Depending on the cat, their ears might be really pointed, and depending on the cat, but also the angle you're looking at them. And they have this cartilage that comes down the back side of that part of the ear. And this picture is kind of hard to tell, but you know, their ears are going to have some fur coming off the back side, and that usually buries itself into their fur somewhere, and then that line continues off to the back of their head, you know, more or less. So again, this is more of like my interpretation of how to draw one. I could draw him, like I've said this before, I can draw him really realistically if I'd like to, but I like to try to keep it stylized and do it your own way. But this is a basic enough representation, right? So you get the circle to start with, do your little triangle ears, and I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try to do, I haven't drawn one from memory in a while. I'm going to give that a shot and see if I can put my money where my mouth is. And so then his ear over here, you can do a little bit of a hard lining here because his ear is buried by his head. So something like that. And the more you start putting detail on here, the more he's going to look like a cat to you. That's just how it is for me anyway. If you start doing this little whisker bump, you know, the, what do you want to call them? I guess they're pores, right? For their whiskers. So yeah, you don't have to be perfect. The whiskers are always crazy. So this is where you get to have fun too, you know, like you don't have to put the whisker that comes off the back side of his cheek there in that picture, but if you'd like to, by all means do so. I usually just do the ones up front. And then this cat's really interesting colored because he's got like a little grayness that comes in. He's dark, like right around here, and then he's white all the way down the rest of him. I don't know what the rest of him looks like, so I can just assume that he might look something like this. Again, this is me interpreting here. I don't know what he actually looks like. Because again, there's no backside to him, if that makes sense. I can only see the head. But anyway, that's a basic enough idea of a cat. Like, he doesn't look exactly the same as him, but that's okay. I'm not going for absolute replication. I just want the idea of the cat. That way you can kind of follow along if you'd like to. That is the point of these. And I just think it's fun. I think they're cats. I love cats. They drive me crazy, but I love them. I don't know. We have a love-hate relationship. I love them. They hate me. No, I'm just kidding. No, they're super sweet, our cats. They want all the attention, and sometimes you can't give it to them, and they get mad at me. All of us. Because we're all trying to work. Most of us, actually pretty much everybody in this house works from home. So it's a bit rough when the cats want constant attention. And again, here I'm not really doing anything super detailed. I'm just filling in his fur, or like shading him in basically. And then with his eye, I mean, you can go and get your colored pencils or your marker. But what they tend to do is have some saturation around the outer part of their eye, or I guess I would imagine it's where the protein more is built up, or the muscle from the iris. So, I mean, you could sit here and keep shading it, and then you'll probably end up with something similar. I'm just going for a quick sketch of a Kitula. But yeah, they usually have this kind of even like I said before in the other videos, they usually have, even if they're a darker cat, they'll have this line that connects to their ear. And of course they have the M shape also, but at this angle you don't really see it very well. But you can put an indication of that if you want. And then the front side's going to be a little darker from the way this picture is drawn. I'm sorry, the way the picture was taken. The lighting is a little bit more intense on his head rather than the front. You might normally see. Plus he has gray fur on the front of his head. And then on the bottom he's got that white stuff, the white fur. So, and again, I could blend this out a little bit if I want. Kind of spreads the graphite around, but it keeps your lines and it gives you a little bit of shading. And this pencil doesn't smudge very easily, so it's not as obvious, which I actually do like that pencil, like this pencil for that. If you get too much and you want like that glow effect around his edge of his face, you just take your eraser and erase out a little bit if you want. But I'm not going for that right now. I'm just going for the basic sketch. And I'll probably ink them up real quick so you can see what I mean. You know what I mean, Vern? Man, I feel old saying stuff like that. People don't know what I'm talking about. No, I mean, Vern. Yeah, from here, I mean, you can just add your own details. But that's it. That's the basic idea of drawing a cat, is just make sure that you know, like, draw what you see, but having a foundation of where that line comes down here, this line comes here. You know, it's similar to doing like a Loomis method for a cat head, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's more or less the way to do that. All right. And last time I did this, I inked it with the thicker brush pen. I'm going to use the Micron. This is the 08. I mean, they're both microns, but this is I used this before. This is good for big fills, or if you want like really fat texture lines or like minimalist style stuff. And then this is more fine lining. And since, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use this one real quick. And so you can hard line the darker parts if you'd like. There's a little nose there. And so you can smooth up your lines. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Just the indication that they're straight enough at some point. I don't know what I'm saying there. They're straight. They're hard enough looking lines. You can tell that they represent something structured. I'm also drawing a little bit further away than I would normally do because I'm trying to talk into this microphone and not make too many quote-unquote mistakes. I mean, you know, it's art. You do what you want, but I try to be intentional with what I'm doing. So I'm trying to say. But, you know, mistakes, so to speak, happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually really like Scribble now. And when I was younger, when I was a kid, I used to freak out if I made the wrong line somewhere. And I'd think, okay, well, now I got to start over. But really, just finish it. There's nothing wrong with that. Just leave it. It doesn't always have to feel like you drew a masterpiece. And even if you do, no one's going to care. I really mean that. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I just mean people are going to be like, oh, it looks good. And you're going to be beating yourself up over it. Well, I didn't put that line exactly where that went. And they're like, oh, I didn't know it was supposed to be there. Or wasn't supposed to be there. Yeah, I readjusted his eye there. Gave him some darkness around his eye to kind of match his feel. I mean, you could sit here and painstakingly do this. I'm not going to right now, but I just doing this, you can see the textures and stuff. Make sure that he's. I say he because we have a boy cat. We have a girl cat too. I don't know. He just looks like a boy to me for some reason. It's probably a girl. Knowing my luck. Good thing I don't play the lottery. I mean, bet, huh? I don't know what I'm doing. So that kind of scoops down. They look like they're constantly smiling because of the way their jaws are. Yeah. Yeah, no. That made her look kind of like a girl in my mind. Like the way how dark she looks. I mean, how like she's got eyelashes on is what I'm trying to say. I didn't mean to do that. I'm like characterizing this drawing. But, oh well. That's what she is now. Does she know? She is a she cat because, you know, that's what she wants to be. She wants to be a she cat. Your characters just do what they want to do. You don't get to... You're just drawing them. So see, when I was blending this stuff out, you kind of lose sight of where some of the marks are, and that's okay. You can just kind of go... It's just a guide. You know, even your sketch is really just a guide if you're going to ink it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And they have sort of a thick amount of skin that goes around the top of their ear. And like I said, that cartilage kind of comes back down here. That's more or less right. And then we'll do these little guys. Because you know why? We can. Like I said, my style now is kind of like lends itself more to comics, and when I draw, I can still draw realism. I mean, obviously comic books are realism, but I mean, I can do like hyperrealism if I want to, but like I have said before, I don't really love to do hyperrealism. It doesn't feel as expressive to me, so I just don't really mess with it anymore. I tried it. Like I said, it was cool. It's cool to do. See that I could actually do it. But then I just realized I like to do this better. And when you're doing their fur, by the way, if you want it to look realistic, you just sweep the direction the fur goes, like the way that they're... You can just look at your reference if you need one, but, you know, it kind of goes with the flow of their face. Kind of... So I'm trying to keep that camera still. It's not working very well. Anyway, you get the idea. So, if it's your kit to do it however you want to do it. And then, like I said, it's easier to color, obviously, with a marker or something. But you can just give the impression. You don't have to go through all that detail. This is your brain will do the rest of the work for you. Also, it doesn't have to be fur. I mean, it could very well be that this is just the way you're shading it, you know. Just sporadic little stuff over here. Anyway. Like I said, don't be perfect with it, you know, just kind of just play with it. Like, just do your little These are just random marks. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like putting the pen to paper, giving the hint of fur texture. If you're drawing comics, you tend to draw a lot of stuff very quickly, and you're focusing too much energy. If you're just drawing by yourself, you put a lot of energy and effort into just one drawing, you're never going to get anything done. So unless you're drawing for Marvel, in which case you're getting paid by the page and they expect a certain kind of quality, if you're doing it by yourself, I just recommend getting it to where you're happy with it. I mean, that more or less works, right? More or less looks like a kid. Final verdict. Let me ask my wife and see what she thinks.
Looks like a kid to me.
She said it looks like a kitty to her, so we're good to go.